Good evening, everyone. Thanks for those of you joining us in person. I'm sure we have some folks on Zoom. I would like to call this regular meeting of the Board of Education to order. The annual tour of schools with the town boards and RTM committees will be held on Saturday, March 18th, beginning at 8:30 a.m. at Middlesex Middle School. The next regular Board of Education meeting is on Tuesday, March 28th at 7:30 p.m. in the board meeting room. So thank you. Good evening, everyone. My comments will be brief. I just want to thank the Board of Finance. We presented the Board of Education budget to the Board of Finance, I guess, a little over a week or so ago, along with First Selectman Monica McNally presented the town budget. So I want to thank the Board of Finance. I also want to thank the RTM Subcommittees Education and RTM Subcommittee F&B Finance and Budget. Thank you for working with us. We'll continue to work with you as we continue to go through this process. You'll see on the agenda also toward the end of the meeting, there's a topic. We want to start a conversation around the budget process. And we've all had some ideas as we've been through this budget process, and some of us have been on the board for a while. So I think there's a way to kind of look at it, look at the schedule, look at when people get involved. I think the important thing to look at is the time and energy that people spend, especially the commitment of the superintendent and the cabinet around the budget process and answering questions. I think we have to look at the superintendent budget and the work that's done on that budget, and then the work that's then done from a board perspective in conjunction with information from the public and the subcommittees and the partnerships we have with the other folks out there. So I look forward to that conversation. We'll really direct that toward John Cini and the Finance Committee to kind of take that under advisement and work through some budget process ideas and schedule ideas, and then have a full board conversation too, and include our partners. So I'd also like to thank, I know it was standing room only last night, but Joanna and CDSP, thank you for speaking on behalf of the budget last night at the public hearing. I think weather and everything else prevailed, but thank you for attending. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it. I think the chairman of the Board of Finance didn't even make it, right? From a train perspective, but thank you. So with that, we will move on to public comment. Michelle?
Good evening. If anyone in person or online would like to participate, please wait for the chair to call you, or if you're online, use the raise hand option. You will have up to 3 minutes to comment. Please state your name and address for the record. Should we start in person?
Sure. Anyone in the audience? We good? Thank you. Anyone on Zoom?
There are no raised hands.
All right, good. More public comment at the end. We'll move on. Dr. Adley, Superintendent's report.
Good evening, everybody. Happy St. Patrick's Day for Friday. We will hopefully hear the bagpipe around town.
Leave it to you to bring that up.
But March has it. But there's
St.
another.
Patrick's Day.
But there's another wee reason for March. March is also Board Appreciation Month of Boards of Education, and there's a wee message here for you, actually from a Connecticut native.
Thank you. I'm happy to join you today, albeit virtually. Just like school, we know there's no substitute for being with you in person. While I can't be in Connecticut today, I'm so thankful to have a moment with you now to celebrate Board of Education Appreciation Month. So personally, thank you, and acknowledge how hard you're all working for the children of Connecticut. I want to thank the trees, Lisa, and the whole team at CAVE for the great work you do. CAVE has really stepped up these last several years, and I've been fortunate to be able to work more closely with CAVE. Thank you, CAVE. Thank you all boards of education. What a time to be leading. You've done a great job. We see that board members are volunteers, but that could be farther from the reality. Over the past few years, you've taken on heavy fire. You've faced threats, bullying, protests. You stay in the arena. You wear many hats and roll up your sleeves to get to work for our schools and for our students. From elevating critical issues like learning recovery, mental health support, to ensuring that parents and communities get to have more say in their child's learning. Your efforts in and for your communities make all the difference. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
So I tried to get him to make an appearance on Zoom. If his schedule had have worked, he would have done it for us. But anyway, thank you, Miguel. I appreciate that. I want to congratulate our basketball unified team. This week, I think on Monday, they went to Fairfield and they competed and had a great time. And everyone was a winner at Fairfield, so congratulations. Thank you to the staff who work with our children and to our students for participating. Since last time we spoke, the boys squash team won the Fair West Conference, the girls hockey team won the FCIC and the state championship, the boys hockey team won the FCIC, and the girls indoor track team were our Eastern Division champions. So congratulations to all our teams. Oxridge lunches commenced today, hot lunches. Some of you maybe not know there weren't hot lunches up to this point, I don't know, but this is the day we started. We were able to get the van and we're kicking off for the remainder of the school year. So thank you for Chartwells. We had some problems with securing registrations and vans and so on, but thank you to the parents actually for hanging in there and for our students too. So today's a hot day over at Oxridge. Thank you. But prior March 1st, we had a successful 5th grade students with IEPs and 504s preparing to go to the middle school, and that was very well received over at Middlesex and Middle School. So thank you to the parents who participated in that. As also for our parents today for conferences in the afternoon tomorrow and the evening tomorrow. We do have an evening opportunity, and then one on Friday. March 17th is a professional learning community day at the high school, so that's a delayed opening. Tour of the schools is March 18th, if you would like to accompany us, and we'll be starting over at the middle school at 8:30. That agenda is posted, and it will also be videotaped and posted too, so if you can't get out on Saturday, you'll have an opportunity to review it. Congratulations to our robotics team, and I want to thank the staff, because staff for their Friday night, Saturday all day, Sunday all day at Waterbury. Following online their performance, they won the first 3 matches, then they get paired up with different teams. So they did very well throughout the day. They ended up winning the Rookie All-Star Award. So congratulations to them. I also want to congratulate the programming club who competed in the Cyber Quest at Sikorsky in Stratford on Saturday, March 4th. Our team took 3rd place. That is a cloud-based competition that includes problems created by Lockheed Martin cybersecurity engineers. So I can only imagine the technical aspect of that. And the talent there. Dr. Alicia Dad, our Doctor of Mental Health, starts on Monday. We will have an opportunity for Alicia to reach out to the parents late April, stroke early May, but hopefully late April to facilitate discussions at the various schools. Our Director of Security, those meetings will be going forward with the PTO, so they're certainly being scheduled just at the moment. I just want to talk about the Newsies. I think you've got to be updated on for us there. And our board committee meetings are curriculum March 16th, the finance the 23rd. We will have discussions about the communications on the 24th, whether that's up and running or not, and the policy meeting on March 31st.
Thank you, Dr. Adler.
So thank you.
Swaha, we'll move quickly over to you. Good to see you this evening.
Good to see you too. Unfortunately, John's at a rehearsal, but he would want me to remind everyone to buy their tickets for Newsies if they haven't already. Opening night is tomorrow and it's running through Saturday. The student government's elections are kicking off next week. So you're going to see like a lot of posters and campaigning, and students will vote for their favorite candidates on April 5th. Also next Wednesday is the junior class will have their state mandated SAT in school. So I have that to look forward to. And in honor of Board Appreciation Month, I would also like to give my thanks to everyone. And the last few months I've gotten to see how much time and effort goes into making every single one of these decisions. So, and I'm sure there's even more going on behind the scenes. So I think I can speak for all Darien Public School students when I say we really appreciate everything that you do.
Thank you for saying that. We appreciate that. And thank you for the time and energy that you and John put into it too. Much appreciated. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes. May I have a motion to approve the following minutes of the special meeting held on February 28th, 2023, and minutes of the regular meeting held on February 28th, 2023. Julie, second by John. All those in favor, it is unanimous for all of us that are here. We will go on to board committee reports. There is a Oxridge Building Committee meeting tomorrow at 10 o'clock. I'll have more of an update next time, but that continues to stay on schedule and under budget. And we heard Dr. Adley talking about the hot lunches over there. We will actually see the gymnasium and the cafeteria and the music room structure on the tour on Saturday. So that will be exciting. It's looking good. I think other than this last week, the weather has helped us, but we're on schedule for that school fully open for the September school start. Jill?
HHR. Cute. HHR submitted their first bid package. You all may remember we had an early bid package for some of the electrical equipment that has a very long lead time. Those have been approved by the state and they're out. That's exciting. Or those at least been. And then the second piece is we're finishing our construction drawings. Those should be finished by the end of the week. Actually, they're going out for approval by our committee next Wednesday. And they'll be to you all at our March 28th meeting also for approval. Also exciting.
Sarah?
The curriculum committee subcommittee has a meeting tomorrow morning at 8:30. We will be talking about science and music, so tune in.
Good. Anyone else? Good. Thank you. We'll move on to presentations and discussions. Update on district strategic plan, board goals, diversity, equity, inclusion. Dr. Adley and Dr. Tranberg.
If you don't mind, I will start with the board goals, and you have the memorandum, so I'm just going to touch on things very, very quickly, unless any board members would like to bring any discussion up or about any item. Board goal number 1, evaluate and maximize safety and security practices for students and staff. Commend the board and the district for the work that is done and the support of the community where we are right now. And we had an update, executive session on school security, and I think we're in a good place. We've done the steps that we said that we we're going to do. Our SSOs anticipate starting in April 19th. We're pleased that we're going to be able to place the 6 SSOs simultaneously. The hiring process, Leon has worked well with Margin coordinating that to make sure that we can get everybody to start at the same time. So that's very helpful. But we have our Dr. Alicia Dad starts on Monday, so those positions have been filled, and I feel we're making, and the board has made tremendous progress with goal number 1. I actually started to talk about goal number 2 too, which is as much the same around the SEL and around mental health. Dr. Dad will commence again on Monday, and also have outreach to our community on the end of April. The high school will also be having a wellness week, and also be sponsoring a Out of the Darkness campus walk on April 30th to raise funds for suicide prevention and raise awareness and reduce the stigma. So they continue to work on supporting our students in their mental health area. I can pause as I go, or I can just keep going. Good.
Sure. We'll pause after each goal. Julie?
Thank you. Dr. Adley, can you give a little more color on the mental health and SEL presentation for families, district-wide or specific to,
So
or is it still being formed?
it is still being formed, because on Mondays Dr. Dad arrives, so we'll have to do that in collaboration with her. At this point, we're anticipating it could be different, but at this point we're anticipating it being K through 12 opportunity.
Okay.
And we would likely dovetail that with the presentation, with her presentation on mental health stroke SEL. And so give people an opportunity who have questions around that to come to that particular presentation.
And ruler as well would be
Well, that would be part of SEL.
for the SEL. Okay, thank you.
Sarah?
Questioning the mental health updates scheduled for March 28th. I would assume that Dr. Dad would be a part of that, but she will only have been here for 8 days. Should we push that off?
I think she would appreciate that.
I just,
I
how
certainly,
much
certainly put that on because it was on there.
Yeah.
I think it would be
We
probably.
can have that in our agenda
Yeah.
conversation. Good
just want
point.
to bring that up.
Thank you. Give her a few more extra days. Goal 3?
Okay, so oversee the implementation of the strategic plan. Sort of one of the updates here I have is sort of the discussion about the early adoption of board goals because it ties directly to the strategic plan. So that's something that we have to discuss, and I think we sort of have discussed it to bring that forward. Hopefully, maybe at the end of June. And the most recent one is that the board the board adopted budget aligns to the strategic plan and supports it. I'll pause for a moment before I go to 4.
On the floor.
So enhance the board and
Yeah,
district.
sure. Jill?
So Alan, this is more an update on what's occurred, but in terms of the strategic plan itself, there are board goals, which are a separate entity from the
Yeah.
strat plan. Do you have any intention of taking a look at the strat plan?
Well, Chris is going to update as part of that,
Great,
part of his update here.
thank you.
And certainly if the board wants me to add something in, like we would like to modify something or have that discussion, yes, we can put that in. You can add that in, actually, you can add that in tonight if you wish.
Yes.
The board and district communication, so the work of the communication committee has been up and running. We're ready. This will be sent out to you before they close this week, the survey for board members. And it's fairly straightforward for board members. So you'll be asked to record there'll be examples for you, but you'll just be asked to record anything that you think the board members do in the way of communication. And it can just be raw data for the moment. We did submit written and in-person testimony to state legislators. And we're researching the actual communication survey plan. I would say up top something I would like us to do a wee bit more of, or like for instance, celebrate student and staff achievements. We do. I'd like to elevate that if I could in some way. I think we could do. We can improve even more on that. There's areas here that we haven't discussed. Administration, for instance, discussed the Power of Moments book by the Heath brothers, and they have been celebrating and recognizing staff throughout the year in different ways. Our retirement parties has been sort of changed and elevated a little bit. But I think there's other things that we could do. Like I'll put this on myself. I still would like to see Teacher of the Year, Paraprofessional of the Year, more recognitions, just of the teaching staff and of teaching and learning. And so I think that's an area where I would want to look at and continue to see if we can find ways to celebrate both adults and students. And the policy committee did to identify policies and procedures to support and enhance district communications. That's just sort of ongoing. An example of that might be the inspection of materials, the policy, right? Because that's an open, transparent process then. So the work on that sort of will kick in pretty rapidly here.
Tara?
So I just had a question about the idea of like Teacher of the Year and things
Yeah.
like that, and recognition, and not that I'm against recognizing, but we don't recognize students. We've gotten rid of honor roll and all of that long time ago. So, if we're going to recognize teachers, why don't we recognize students? I don't know.
No, did you say we don't recognize students?
Yeah.
We do recognize students.
We do?
Yeah.
Because I haven't seen an honor roll in years.
Well, that's not the only way we recognize them though.
Okay.
But-
So can you explain to me how we recognize them then?
Well, one example is we, throughout the year, at the end of the year, we have a recognition ceremony for students.
You mean a graduation?
No,
Like-
I mean, an
No,
award
awards night.
ceremony,
Award ceremony.
an award ceremony where we recognize students for academic performance, club performance, participation.
That is specific to the high school.
Yes, oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
So maybe to your point, Tara, as you
Because
flesh out.
the middle school doesn't, well, they do an award ceremony, but it's not academic based
So
at all. It's
an award ceremony is not academic based?
not middle school, no.
Well, okay, well, they said middle school, okay, cool.
So maybe as you
Or elementary
flesh out, I
schools.
think it's as you flesh out kind of awards and honors,
Yeah.
maybe an update to the board on what we actually do at the high school, at the middle school, and the elementary school.
And so there's other ways of doing it
Good
though. I mean, you could
refresh.
have like students in the spotlight here that was profiles what they do and how they're doing things. There's different ways of, it's not just a ceremony. I just think that there's ways that we could celebrate teaching and learning and our students and our staff. That's just a
Good.
in
Sarah.
perspective.
I think when we talked about adding this as part of our board goal, but we talked about how this was not going to be just for academics. Like this was to celebrate
Right.
achievements of music, of being a nice person, being a good citizen. This was not, not just honor roll. Like that was more a broad achievement, even if it's like, I opened the door for a person that size. Like, how do we,
Sure.
a culture of
Kind gestures. and
recognizing good human beings?
That is a summary of the board goals.
thoughts. Okay, good. Thank you. We'll move on to Dr. Tranberg.
Good evening, everyone. I'll provide, I'll go by goals as well, just a couple of highlights of each of the goals of the strategic plan. And I'll start at the top with, we're finalizing the teaching and learning principles. That has been taken on largely by our Professional Development and Evaluation Committee, the PDEC. So those are drafted. We just have one more round to go through with trying to find some language of what are some identifiable things we would look for in classrooms to align with those principles, and that will be completed by the end of this year. And also our transition from Google Docs into EduPlanet. We have made a lot of progress. So the plan is for 4 years. I'm optimistic that we will get everything done faster than 4 years. But we have a 4-year plan for every department, and we are moving through that and providing professional development to departments as they're ready to make that transition. I'll pause there.
Katie, sorry.
Thank you. Chris, just one question for you. The third bullet mentioning that ELP has been working with Literacy How, developing language and poems and nursery rhyme. I'm just curious about that. Anecdotally, I've been hearing that Literacy How really hasn't had a presence in ELP in Darien for a while. So can you just expand a little on what that is and how it's happening?
Yeah, I'll defer to Shirley for that.
Thank you, Chris. Yes, it began 3 years ago. Laura wrote a grant. We started with Margie Gillis that first year. There is one of Margie Gillis's colleagues comes in and works with the teachers in real time and working on the different goals that they've looked at in terms of literacy.
That's actually happening this year?
Yes. She's been on board this year. Not Margie, her colleagues. Yes.
Move on to 2.
Sure.
For professional development, we've had a partnership with Responsive Classroom for several years, so we are continuing with that training. Andy Ducis, whose name appears a few times, has been incredibly successful and well received by teachers. So in addition to classroom teachers, he's also working with paraprofessionals this week during conferences, and he's worked with our special area teachers as well, and that's been wonderful. Our DEI team met on Monday of this week. We have a meeting coming, our April meeting. I'm going to meet separately with each group. And then we have our final meeting in May, at which time we're going to finalize our report and presentation that will be made to the board on June 13th with recommendations from the year and a half of work that they completed.
And Sarah, Chris, I think was just on goal 2. Heading to goal 3, correct?
Yes.
Mhm.
All right, but we'll pause at goal 2. Questions, comments, John?
When you say drafting recommendations are related to?
So they completed the equity audit. So there's 4 areas that they're making recommendations. It's related to achievement, climate, professional capacity, and program participation. So each group will have a few recommendations. I think we're calling them, like we did with the gifted evaluation, we'll probably call them considerations. So we did commendations and considerations, because then it becomes a board and administrative task.
And these were data driven?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
For goal 3, this is largely related to portrait of the graduate. The biggest piece of work is actually coming as part of our administrative retreat in June. We have the language that's been developed at the secondary level. That's what's published in the strategic plan at the end, working on parallel language for elementary. And then the important piece is, well, how do you measure and assure that students have fulfilled the competencies of the vision of the graduate? So that's the work of our retreat coming up. And we've also integrated those conversations in our regular administrative meetings throughout the year.
Anything on portrait of the graduate, goal 3?
I was just going to say, I loved the mention of the core competencies being represented in the Genius Hour projects at Middlesex. And when we get an update on Genius Hour, I'd love to hear more about that.
Yes, and all of those competencies are also built into the EduPlanet platform. They customize that for us, so we can make connections to our curriculum with all the competencies of the vision of the graduate.
When the update of the Genius Hour, can we also get, not obviously the kids' names, but a list of all the projects that are being done?
For professional capacity of staff, I'll point out Marge and in tandem with the DEA are going to meet with first and second year teachers as they did last year. It was a really helpful exercise to go through because we're very good at asking our new teachers what they think after they have their new teacher orientation and onboarding, and they're very excited to say everything was wonderful. And they gave us some revised feedback of what might have helped them be more prepared. So we'll continue that practice because it was very informative for us, and we made some adjustments to our onboarding as a result of that. Additionally, I'll point out that the CT SEDS piece has been a major lift, and everyone has been wonderful in navigating that new platform and working together. And so we've tried to give teachers and administrators as much time as possible to navigate that as smoothly as possible. And we also have our next PDEC meeting. We have a special guest, Jocelyn Delancey. You might remember that name. She is on the state committee. There aren't very many people that are on that committee that redesigned the new feedback system. So she's presenting to our PDEC in April. So we should have a draft in the fall of what the new system will look like. And we're anticipating it'll be another year of a waiver using the current system that we're on.
Any questions on that goal? Chris, can you just qualify the rollout of CT sets? I understand it was actually a little bumpy.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'll certainly let Shirley, but from my perspective, it's absolutely been bumpy across the state. But the way that we have managed the bumpiness when I talk to my other colleagues has been impressive.
Gotcha.
That's the feedback we're getting also. We are leaders in it.
Okay.
We're approaching it, understanding what a challenge it is enthusiastically. Everyone is working as hard as they can and dancing as fast as they can. We've trained all different levels. We're actually in the process of doing a beginning training and intermediate now for our administrators as well. So I think we've realized we've embraced it. We're working through it. We're giving staff the time they need to do it because we spoke earlier this year. It really can go from 20 minutes to 2 hours, and we get better as we go. And I think the staff would tell you that. I don't want to diminish how hard everyone is working because that's how hard everyone is working. But we're making progress and we'll continue to.
I'd also say it stressed the system and it stressed our staff. I mean, so let me just be clear about that, right? We are giving them the time, we're trying to be responsible, they're doing yeoman's work, but there's no doubt that this was a stressful and learning experience. It's done a tremendous job, but I just don't want to minimize either, just the stress it put on the system.
And we actually kind of set up a hub in our own office that we're like the phone, phone a friend. People call in all day long to work with our support staff in our office here. A lot of the errors that happened, the state's working on these glitches, but they're new glitches that come up. Goals come out of order. They're there, but they show up differently in different formats. There's an IP at a glance. There's another format to it. So as we're learning as we go, we have a great deal of support staff helping our colleagues.
Thank you. And given that this topic is expanding the professional capacity of staff, we may not be there yet, but is there an opportunity within house while rolling it out has been, again, has been bumpy. Are there opportunities potentially to streamline down the line that we see coming?
Certainly. Why don't we get better as we go? Because we learn the operations as we did with IP Direct. And also the state is improving a lot of the aspects of the system.
Okay. Over and above just the kind of the smoothing out the data entry, is there anything that the system is providing to us that we didn't have before in terms of how we run our operations?
The parent portal is very friendly, so you can see it in real time. So parents have access to our portal so they can read the IP and get all their information through that. I think that's an improvement. The actual format is improved. The friendliness of the document is improved, and it's much clearer. Prior written notice is a separate document, which really does inform the family in a very clear and precise way, as are the comments in the minutes. So I think the setup of it, once it is more operable, will really enhance the communication between family and school.
Okay. Chris, going forward, one more comment. I just would love for us to look at this goal because we do have a lot of professional development and we see it kind of peppered in here, but just making sure we do capture the universe of the PD we're doing. And sometimes, when you've got that, we talked a lot during the budget season about the, R&D and where that shows up. And, I know sometimes it would be germane to other goals, but where it's relevant to this goal, I think there's quite a bit going on, and I know you're trying to roll it up, present to the board, but.
In the spirit of that, if I may just answer, in the RBT training also, we're trying to train our in-house people to be trainers. So we don't have to go to CS or to other communities. So we're asking many of our own colleagues to become trainers.
Thank you. Anything else? Sorry.
Good.
Under goal 5, communications, we've convened the Elementary Progress Report Card Committee. That is partially a result of the DEA teacher negotiations. So a committee was going to be formed. It fits under this goal because progress reports are a significant communication tool to families. And we really want to make sure that the progress reports are well aligned with the elementary standards that are being taught. So that is underway. And the Board of Ed Communications Committee has met several times. They're in the process of, for the lack of a better word, I know we don't love the word audit, but auditing our communications that we have across the district to try to make sure we have a comprehensive understanding of what communications are out there, where there might be some gaps, and how we can make for more effective communication. I'll pause there.
Jill.
So that first bullet, what are the drivers for, is it just alignment?
Yeah, so then the number one driver would be the actual standards for each grade level. The standards are, that language is very misaligned from the actual standards that are currently in place. So I'm not quite sure the last year that they were updated, but I think it had to be close to a couple of decades, I would guess.
The standards.
The current progress reports. So there's been a significant change in curriculum, and the progress reports have not followed up with the change. They look pre-Common Core is the way they read. So it's been a while.
Thank you. Sarah.
Question about when you think you might be coming, like, is that, are we hoping for next school year or no?
That would be, I think that would be too aggressive. Once that's done, there'll be several presentations. And also there's a significant technology side of that in building a new progress report within Aspen. So at least another school year out.
Do you have a recommendation or best practices on the timeline of when progress reports should be reviewed?
As far as
Well,
this is
you
what
were
we
just
do
saying,
right
like, this
now.
one seems like it had been a really long time since we had done it. So what would we be looking for after this one is in place? When would we look to reassess again?
In general, I don't think that you need to overhaul an entire progress report at once. There are times all standards don't change at once. So if we have a new social studies framework that comes from the state, there's no reason why we should press pause and say, are we aligned or are we not aligned? It should change whenever that happens.
Do you see it being more of an ongoing process in the future?
Yes.
Thank you.
We talked a bit earlier, but I think the security aspect of communication is going to be important over the next, I don't know, 1 to 3 months. So I don't see that here, but and I don't know if that's too granular, but I would certainly add that.
Yes, thank you. And I'll also add to Ms. McKemmon's earlier comment about just looking at the strategic plan in general. We had discussed at an earlier meeting, perhaps not waiting until the retreat to do that because it's a bit late, but considering an additional meeting sometime this spring or to do it during a regular meeting. So that just needs to be discussed with you. And I'll move on to goal 6. I know we've already talked about HHR and Ox Ridge. Those are just 4 really exciting things that are happening. So I wanted to name those again. And other than that, these are very current updates, so I won't belabor this one.
Questions?
Just I would add the track, a pretty big one. Once that's officially approved by the RTM, it's on its way.
That's a good one. Thank you. And under goal 7, we do another type of security, always looking to improve our security of our infrastructure. And so there's been cybersecurity training, and we have a new email filtering system that is in place as of I think last week. And also pointing out that we are looking into how we're going to make our redesign of the tech department working with this coordinator position. So that is underway as well.
Sorry, one other add back in the last one, is the auditorium too, as well. It's pretty.
Thank you.
Yeah, capital.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No, that's good. That's what this is for.
Better to go back than to miss. Anything else on 6 or 7?
Jones, sorry.
So I just wanted, Laura Straighten reached out to me, but to Katie's question earlier, there've been 2 workshops thus far. The next workshop from Literacy How is on March 24th, not the 17th, just to give some more information to the board.
Thank you.
There we go.
Yeah, no. All right, 8B, presentation and possible approval of international trips for 2024. Dr. Tranberg, Ms. Mauricio, and Mr. Jemsko, please.
I will turn it over to Christina and Francis.
I have to tell you, I'm so excited about these trips again. So I'll preface it with that.
I just came back from our Galapagos pre-departure meeting at the high school. So we're leaving in 24 days. It's gonna be awesome. So tonight, Francis and I will be presenting the World Language and English trips for 2024. And I will start with my presentation and then introduce Francis, who will do his, and then we'll both be available to answer questions at the end. Because we're both traveling with EF, a lot of it is, oh, thank you. A lot of it is the same. The agenda for tonight, some of you may recognize this because it's very similar to the previous times that I've done this. But I've included information about our program development and our EF partnership and safety on tour in here so that you can look at it if you want to. But I'm going to skip ahead to safety and then continue on with itineraries if that's okay. If you have questions about anything in the previous slides, you can ask afterwards. So program development, I'm going to skip through what students gain from educational travel, which we all know. Education First and our partnership, it's the company that we travel with, and safety. Safety obviously is our #1 priority. Whenever we travel on an EF tour, we have a dedicated personal tour director on location. They meet us at the airport. They say goodbye to us when we get on the plane home. The Education First as a company has a peace of mind and global travel protection program that covers us the entire time while we're there. And it's one of the main reasons that we chose to partner with them 3 years ago when we started this, because they support our district policies and are very similar to what we do. So the first trip I'm presenting is the Spanish language immersion trip, which is 9 days to Argentina and Iguazu Falls over April break of 2024. On the first day, we arrive in Buenos Aires and we spend 3 days exploring the city. When the city of Buenos Aires, I equate it to New York City in the sense that it's very large, a lot of different neighborhoods, different foods, a confluence of culture. You could spend a year in the city alone and not see everything that you'd want to see. So we spend 3 days exploring the city, monuments, markets, all the different neighborhoods. We then go on to Colonia del Sacramento in Uruguay. And this is, we actually get on a boat and we cross the River Plate to see this Spanish colony. So students can see traditional colonial architecture from the Spanish colonization. And then we're back in Buenos Aires for a day before we go to the border of Argentina and Brazil to visit Iguazu Falls. And we spend a day there. There's more, I could go on and on about what we're going to do and the highlights, but that's in the detailed itinerary, which is in the packet that I provided for everyone. I'm most excited about the pink house, which is the White House in Argentina, but theirs is pink. So that may or may not be why I'm wearing my pink jacket. The next trip, which is also over April break of 2024, is a trip to France. And to back up for a second, we've come up with these 3 locations after asking for feedback on locations to all students in the DHS community. Over the years, there's been a lot of interest in a trip to France for our students that study French. And it's the perfect opportunity because springtime in France is absolutely beautiful. This trip is 12 days. It starts in the French Riviera before it makes its way north through Provence and the lavender fields of Provence, north to Lyon, the culinary capital of France. Some may say it's Paris, but it's actually Lyon. And then up to the Loire Valley to see all of the chateau and the gardens. And you basically can't do this type of trip in France without visiting that area, and then moving on for a 2-night stay in Paris before going to Normandy and seeing the area where the Allies landed on D-Day on Normandy Beach, which is really special, a really special extension that we've added onto this trip. And again, I could say so much about this trip alone, but it's in the detailed itinerary, the stops and the excursions and all the extra things that the students will be doing. So 2 separate trips, 2 different languages over April break. And then the last one, similar to the summer trips that we've been planning in summer of 2022, students went to Germany and Switzerland. This summer, they're going to Italy. And then next summer, there's an opportunity to go on a specialized STEM trip to London and Stonehenge. And the purpose of this trip, just to give you some color on this one, students are exploring the inner workings of London's principal monuments and buildings. They visit Stonehenge, they study with researchers at the Royal Observatory. It's a real hands-on experience for students that are particularly interested in architecture, applied sciences, astronomy, and of course, engineering. And all of the students that travel on this trip actually get expert-led tours and do research with people that work in them. And like in Big Ben, you actually go up to the clock tower and you see how again, there's all this is in the board packet, but it's open to all students. This trip is open to all students at DHS, rising sophomores, juniors, and seniors. And it in particular interesting to students that are interested in science, engineering, and architecture. And accommodations and meals, and then what's included and what's not. So this would also apply to, similar to the safety information, this also applies to Francis's presentation. So I'll do it here just in the interest of time. The hotels are centrally located, they're safe, 3 and 4 stars, Wi-Fi, and the meals on tour are intended for students to eat as locals would. Breakfast and dinner are included, and lunchtime is really an opportunity for students to travel through the location where we're in to explore food that they would like to try with their tour guides, with the group. And yeah, that's pretty much it as far as accommodations and meals. I could answer questions if someone has them, but those are like the broad strokes. And then what's included and what's not. So I've included here the prices of our trips. But as far as what's included and what's not is also similar to what Francis will be presenting later. We should view these trips as all-inclusive in the sense that they include airfare, breakfast and dinner, all travel once we arrive, access to our tour director, the traveler support team back in the United States, all of the expert-led tours, all the activities, all of the project-based learning, everything that happens on tour is included. And then what's not is up there if there's a passport fee, ground travel to the airport, lunches and snacks. If you apply for the college credit, the global travel protection, which can be added later, but that's pretty much it. So Argentina, France, and STEM in London. And that's all for me.
I feel like giving you a round of applause.
That was fast. It's fast for me. I like to talk.
Thank you. I too love to talk, but I've been instructed by our instructional leader to keep it short. That's going to be very important when we get to our second slide in a minute. What's happening here? Oh, we're going through everything?
Yeah.
I'm looking for my slides.
Oh, give me 1 second.
I'll begin by saying, so I'm proposing to you a similar international trip called Literature in England. It goes without saying that the reason I'm here tonight is because of the person next to me, because they say that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Well, we are imitating not exactly the locations of the world language trips, but we wouldn't have this idea if not for Christina and the great work that they've been doing in world languages. Basically, it's the same tour organization, EF, Education First. Everything that Christina has already presented is a part of basically the structure of this trip. I was so amazed by all the great trips that you've approved and that they've already done and that is already in the pipeline. I was just curious to see if there was something that connected to English, and lo and behold, there's something called Literature in England. It didn't take much doing to get some of our teachers on board with this idea. And then we did a survey. So we have a number of students that are interested in this trip. So we know that the students are out there. So we feel really good about this and proposing it to you tonight. Our trip is destined for April of 2024, just as a couple of Christina's trips are as well. So I have this wonderful poem that I brought to you, but in the name of time, and just say, I feel defeated, and my secret dream was to have a poetry explication breakout here at the Board of Ed for the first time ever. But suffice it to say, we'll get rolling through it. I did, this is the kind of thing that old English teachers do. They bring a small poem at the beginning of a class, establishing a theme for the lesson.
Francis, I just want to point out that the number of words you used to describe why you didn't read it, you could have read it.
Fair enough. I'll leave it. Obviously, William Wordsworth is one of the authors, one of the poets that our students would visit, one of the places that he made famous in England, and I'll leave it at that. So these are the primary destinations for the trip, and I want to just emphasize that the plan for the first year would be to do the book trip and use the standard itinerary that has been designed by EF. Later on, having done it once, we might decide, hey, you know what, this wasn't the most effective place and we want to make some revisions. That costs a little bit more, so we decided for this first time to go with the standard book itinerary. So I'll get to the authors in just a moment, but I'll just say that we start with a 2-day stay at the Lake District, which is a national park in England. It's made famous by British Romantic poets. We move on to Yorkshire, which we'll get to the famous authors that are known for their work there in just a moment. Stratford upon Avon would be day 4. Day 5 is Oxford. I'll get to the reason why that's been added to the trip as well. Day 6 is Bath, and we finish with a 2 days, really 2.5 days in London. The authors, and these are folks that we read in our curriculum. So the Lake District is made famous by the British Romantic poets. To the left is a very young William Wordsworth, and his esteemed colleague Samuel Taylor Coleridge is to his right. And we'll learn a lot more about those poets, having visited their the location of many of their poems. Day 3, we have in Yorkshire, that's made famous by the Bronte sisters. We're familiar with 2 of them. The one to your right is Charlotte. She wrote Jane Eyre. That's something that we read at the high school. To your left is Emily Bronte. In the middle, we don't really know much about, we don't really read Anne Bronte, but she's the 3rd Bronte sister who is also a writer as well. Day 4 is all things Shakespeare. We will see his birthplace. We will see one of the places that he went for his elementary schooling. We'll see Anne Hathaway, wife's cottage. We will see his burial place. So it's a great little town. I've been there myself before because we English teachers like to nerd out and go on these trips on our own. Day 5, basically, I had a hard time figuring out exactly what the reason was for going to Oxford. And I was able to unearth that we will spend some time at New College, where a lot of scenes from the Harry Potter movies were filmed. And it looks like that's the so-called literary connection that we have on that day. So I'll just feature that. I'm sure it will be heartbreaking for me to come back from this trip, let's say with our kids, and have that be the featured memory of the trip. But anyway, who knows? Bath is made famous not only for the Roman baths, and that's why it's called Bath, but for Mary Shelley on our left, who is the author of Frankenstein that we read in honors English 10. And Jane Austen to the right. Finally, we wind up in London. I have depicted there Charles Dickens and Virginia Woolf. We read them. They're very famous for their stories set in London. We will also see the Globe Theatre, or the reconstructed Globe Theatre, which is amazing. We will see a production there, and we will also have a workshop performed by actors for the students there. So I think it's a tremendous trip. Here are the ways in which it really gets at a lot of the works that we do in the curriculum already, right? So it won't really take much to put, to make connections with the kids that go on the trip in terms of what we're learning about. I feel like this is sort of, just doing exactly what Christina did. So I'm thankful that she went over all the bells and whistles that come with EF trips earlier. You can see the price, you can see what comes with it, you can see what doesn't come with it. It's virtually the exact same as all of her trips. And pretty much I feel like everything I'm doing is really much the exact same, only it's the English version. I've looked a little more into the EF catalog, and there isn't really, I don't expect that we're going to be, coming up with a lot of trips like this every year. I think this is something that we would like to do and like to offer our kids, but I don't see as much on there as there are, let's say, for world language and world culture. But I'm very excited about this. Our teachers are very excited about this opportunity for our kids, and the kids that we've already talked about this idea with are also very excited as well. So at this point, I will resist the urge to go back to that poem. And if you have any questions you'd like to ask.
You can read
of
it.
us.
You can read us the
Well-
poem. Please do. Read it to us.
So I mean,
Yes.
all right. Traveling. This is the spot. How mildly does the sun shine in between the fading leaves? The air in the habitual silence of this wood is more than silent. And this bed of heath, where shall we find so sweet a resting place? Come, let me see thee sink into a dream of quiet thoughts, protracted till thine eye be calm as water when the winds are gone and no one can tell whither. My sweet friend, we too have had such happy hours together that my heart melts in me to think of it. So the real purpose of this is that what we see is an environment that is having a major effect in shaping the mood and the dreams and the imagination of the speaker of the poem and the sweet friend, and then the reader. So it's really the same experience we're looking to give our kids by putting them in environments where these poets and writers crafted these great works, so they too can feel in that location the mood and the dreams and the imagination that those writers felt as well. That's the purpose of that poem.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Sarah?
Just quickly, I don't remember, are these open to all grades?
10 through 12.
10 through 12, okay, thanks.
Sarah?
Just question about travel insurance. It's an add-on, right? It's not a requirement. Is there any thought to maybe requiring travel insurance? I'm just thinking, God forbid there's a medical emergency or whatever.
So there is, traveling with EF comes with their basic travel insurance
okay.
plan. The one that you can purchase after is an enhanced policy.
Perfect, thank you.
And we also, like, students are covered by their own insurance and also with us.
Julie?
Thank you. These are amazing. I'm available for all of them, which is gonna be hard because they're happening at the same time, a lot of them. But that's a lead into my question, which is, do we have any concern about being able to find enough chaperones? Now, there are only so many vacations.
Unequivocally,
to spend your
no.
vacation with your students. Okay,
There's,
that's great.
I have a waiting list.
Okay, love it.
So no, I don't think we'll have.
Is there concern about enough students to do all three or?
We just need a minimum of 6
Oh,
to
okay.
run the trip. So if there would be an issue if there were fewer, but no.
So I have two questions for you, Christina. The first one, well, actually, a couple. The first one is STEM in England. I love the concept, but why is that coming out of your department?
We, in our original proposal in 2021, we said that we would like to offer a trip that was open to all students at the high school, so that it wasn't just exclusive to the world language department. So very similar to what happened with Francis. I would have loved to run a literature in England trip. I'd be happy to do all the logistical work, but that's, Francis was like, that's a great idea. So very similar to the STEM trip, we're offering it so that more students can have that opportunity. It's not exclusive to, oh, if you don't take a world language, but you like STEM, you can't go on it. It's open to everyone.
And then do we, is there a reason why you're changing some of the trips? You know, why are we not repeating Galapagos, for example?
Oh, so that's so that the students that are, because we have several repeat travelers on Galapagos right now that went to Spain. So we're going through 3 different locations so that the students that went on them will either have already had that experience or will have graduated.
Okay.
Is there oversubscription where, on any of these trips where you have to prioritize students that haven't gone yet, or?
No, the cap is at 60.
Okay, so big.
So
numbers.
it's pretty high.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty high.
So are you going to Argentina or France?
I don't know. I'll clone myself and I'll go on both. I'm not sure on which one I will go, but the person who is leading, who's listed as the leader of that trip, traveled to Germany and Switzerland with students in the summer. So whether it's me or her as
Oh, I was
the
just
lead
curious if
person,
you were-
yeah, I can't decide. I don't know.
Any other questions? Are we ready to approve these or not? Okay. May I have a motion to approve the proposed international trips to Argentina, April 2024, France, April 2024, and STEM in England, summer 2024? Julie, seconded by Tara. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Okay. Second motion. May I have a motion to approve the proposed international trip literature in England, April 2024? Katie, seconded by John. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Okay, thank you both very much.
Thank you
Very
both
exciting.
very, very
you.
much. I can't say I'm happy about these things. It's, Chua, how are you going?
I want to.
Special privilege.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, guys.
With that, we'll move on to the annual review and possible action on extending the term of the reciprocal agreement for the use of facilities with the YMCA. Rich.
So we're currently in the second year of the agreement. It has worked out very well. The district has saved over $76,000 since its implementation. We did reach out to Jennifer Garner, the YMCA Darien CEO, and she's thrilled with the agreement. The communication between both sides is drastically improved in terms of cancellations, if there are any on their side. So we strongly recommend extending the agreement.
Any questions?
Have there been any shifts in expenses on either side that would cause you to want to renegotiate anything? Clearly, this is a proposal, I'm guessing not material or anything.
Not really. We kind of benchmark about 2,900 hours and they've been, just shy of that. So not really.
Okay, perfect. This has worked out really well. So it's good work.
Questions? No. May I have a motion to extend the reciprocal agreement on the use of facilities with the YMCA for the 2023-2024 school year? John, seconded by Tara. All those in favor? That's unanimous. All right, the next agenda item, discussion and reflection on fiscal year 24 Board of Education budget process. I'll kick this off Duke queued it up a little bit in the chair report. We're just looking to identify tonight some areas that we might want to think about. This is not meant to be a problem solving, more problem or issue or opportunity identification. So if there's some area where we want to improve or something that we think we could take advantage of, this is the night to identify it. Of course, it'll be an ongoing discussion. So if there are things we missed tonight, you know, we're just trying to open the box. It will be after tonight, we'll wrap it up and summarize it, send it over to the facilities committee for them to kick it around and come back to us. with some-
Finance.
Finance, thank you.
I do that all the time too.
Yep. So I just for ease of discussion, I was thinking about it. I think we maybe want to sort of think about the budget process in 3 different chunks. The first is the chunk leading up to the actual budget arriving at our doorstep. The second is while we sit and deliberate it. And the third is when it leaves our hands and it goes to the Board of Finance and or the RTM. So as we're just talking about the budget, just to think of those chunks differently. If you have a concern, try to fit it within a phase. So, you know, no surprise to anybody here. One of the things that I would be most interested in is looking at that phase 1, when we actually create our goals and objectives, how the strategic plan aligns with how we operationalize what we want to do, and then tie those to financial goals, and then provide guidance to the superintendent as he, you know, continues with the budget work. There's not really a clean handoff. So that's an area where I know I'm interested in us looking at our portion of the process in terms of timing and what type of information we turn around. But I'll open the floor.
Well, and I just dovetail your comments, you know, the programmatic elements and whether or not, you know, we have to, you know, make a decision whether or not to get briefed on a program before the budget process. So, you know, I think you basically covered that, but you know, just taking a step back and reevaluating it. Was my 4th year in the budget process. I mean, I think it went quite well, and you know, it was a great partnership, and we got a lot of feedback. But the timing of the feedback seems a little disjointed in terms of the roles and responsibilities of each. You know, between the Board of Education, the Board of Finance, and then the RTM. And I did listen to the OPC meeting where they covered this subject a bit, and also the Education Committee discussion, I guess, earlier this week. So, you know, I think Duke touched upon some of it because, I mean, there's its distinct responsibility as laid out by the state statute that we're the governing body, the statutory authority to actually place the line items from the appropriation, from the appropriating body, which I believe in this town is ultimately the RTM. You know, so when we go through the budget line item by line item, it's very important in understanding it. And I'm not discounting the RTM's role or the Board of Finance's role, but they don't have that authority. They have the authority to appropriate certain dollars. And actually, I think this is going to be helpful, having experience on the RTM F&D for 1 year, but 4 years on the RTM. And you were, how many years on the RTM? Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were RTM, but anyway.
I was on
Oh, okay. So some of us have experience on RTM and understanding, you know, what its role is, but, you know, Duke touched upon it. You know, we got a lot of questions from our partners, if you will, in government, and then some other interested parties, and in terms of before the Board of Ed even weighed in on the superintendent's budget. And so a lot of the questions would immediately go to the staff, administration, and cabinet, and create a lot of work. And so I think there's going to be a better way that we can kind of structure the presentation of the superintendent budget, allow the Board of Education to do its work with its staff, and maybe kind of filter some of the questions or time some of the questions better. So we don't have, I mean, I think we probably had well over 200 questions when it was said and done between the Board of Ed and then the partners. And I think it just becomes unwieldy. So looking for a way to get the input, but at the right time from the partners, I think that's going to be really important. We don't want this to be exclusionary, but we want to make sure that we have the order of operation so we can be most productive in producing a Board of Ed adopted budget. And then we, of course, we hand it to the Board of Finance, and then ultimately the RTM, which acts mostly as a referendum body, as I understand it. You know, they can't increase their budget. They can't really move line items around, but they can definitely say no or reduce it. So kind of figure out how to work with the committees. I know the RTM is actually currently discussing its proper committee roles. And it's interesting, as outlined in the town charter, it's a little different than they've been operating. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all flushes out as well. So we have a lot of time, but I'm looking forward to working with the committee and then the rest of you and kind of flushing this all out.
Anyone else? Julie.
Thank you. To kind of add on to what John was saying, I think another thing that gets difficult too is to continue to follow the information through the process, because we're going through our deliberations and you guys are in very short order turning around responses to different bodies on different questions on different topics. But, you know, a question gets answered on, can't come up with an example right now.
Buses.
Snow removal. And someone else has asked a question as well, but it's a different question and they are now, those answers are in two different places. I feel like we could all work together to find a way to streamline that so everything has more of a central collecting spot. A couple other thoughts that I had was, I would love for us as a board to figure out if we can be more, if we can give more or better direction. For example, I felt like we got the presentation of the recommended budget and it was decided that it needed to be brought down a certain amount or try to bring it down a certain amount. And did we not know that beforehand? Why didn't we know that until we saw a number? And could we have given more direction like that up ahead of time? Or should we have? And I'm not saying what the right answer is, but doing that is kind of giving here's the number you have to hit. And I think there's been discussion about not wanting to do that. So I think we need to have some conversation around how we want to do that and what we want to be doing there. And then the last piece I would throw out for now is just moving forward. I'd like us to work on, I feel like there were decisions being made through the budget that were probably decisions that would have been made in other ways. And it might have been timing and circumstance that drove that. But if there are departments that we want to consider reorganizing, or if there are things that need optimizing, I would love to find ways to do that ahead of time. And oh my, if it turns up savings come budget time, that would be great to understand where those savings came from. But I don't want to let the budget drive the process.
Proactive versus kind of
Yes.
reactive, right? Yeah.
So just a couple thoughts.
Sorry, there was one other point that came up when Duke I don't know if Duke mentioned it, the 5-year kind of forecast and kind of refining that and getting, I think we have enough expertise to get a little better at not just straight lining things. Now, at our defense, we do talk about, hey, if we're going to add this FTE and, foreign language, it's going to be adopted and add FTEs in the future, but I think we can be a little more transparent and a little more detailed on how we plan for that too.
John, could I just say for that 5-year, just for clarity, we did do that.
Yeah.
We did do that with some years ago when I first got here. We did the 5 years with any personnel and we played it all out. And then the board decided like, we don't want to do the 5-year anymore. So
Understood.
just making sure we're revisiting
Yeah.
the same thing, which is fine if that's what we want to do again.
Yeah,
But-
I mean, I think it's been asked for, and I think it also, again, as I think of this process, I mean, maybe we get guidance, like true guidance, like, from the fiscal authority in town in what their kind of overall goal is. And we get it, but it's kind of not straightforward and well in advance of, the superintendent's preparation of the budget. I take personal responsibility of instructing the superintendent to, find efficiencies after the presentation of his budget. So I think we can be proactive in this process.
More specific just to the budget and not the process so much, except for the fact that and I've said it before, I would like to see us look at the athletic portion of it earlier, because there was even questions coming out after. And I've had a couple conversations and it just seems so muddy. Like the athletic budget is not transparent and it's very unclear as to, what buses we're paying for some buses outside of Connecticut, there's just, it's really.
So can we do that over a break again, you know? Ooh,
Well, so I think for the purposes of tonight's discussion, thank you, that's a great example. I think there's a fourth stage, which is once we've identified things in the budget cycle that we didn't handle, we need to make sure that they actually get identified.
Exactly.
So that they end up on an agenda in a timely manner, so that we can give them the appropriate level of exploration.
Maybe it's just a choice of words or something. I know you say that's a great example. I don't think I happen to think it's a great example of transparency. Perhaps, maybe there are more questions to be answered and stuff, but I just would be cautious because to our community, I think it's transparent, but if there's other things that needs to, transparent in the sense of it's out there. If there's other things that need to be answered, that's fine. I'm
So
okay
I'm
with that.
going to say we're going to table that discussion for the moment, because I don't want to talk about athletics tonight.
No, of course not.
It's not on the agenda.
Anyone else, board, Swartha, or any members of administration? Sarah?
So I think it's important what John was saying about being proactive, and Julia as well, but versus being proactive versus reactive, I 100% agree with that. I am, and I've said this multiple times, I do not like creating a school budget based on guidance, not from educators. I think I really struggle to have, what if the Board of Finance says, or whatever governing body says, we need a 1% budget? That's just not possible. So I'm not saying that's going to happen. So we just need to be very clear about where our roles are. And if we don't like the guidance and the superintendent says it's absolutely impossible, then we need to recognize that. So you could have guidance, but it does need to be taken with a grain of salt.
Okay, so point
Agreed.
taken, yeah. Well, I just don't want to agreed, but let's put that as an item for them to kick around.
Yep.
No, I do agree with some things, not everything said, to be clear, but let's punt it over to the finance committee to discuss the whole question of guidance. Yes, Alan?
So I think we should probably look at the calendar, everything from when we do the tour of the schools to when we get books, because the same questions come up every year. We have processes we got to do. So we should, if we have to back it even earlier, then we should do all that up front and be very clear with that calendar. And actually the calendar also addresses some of your other topics you discussed, John.
I mean, my goal is actually make your job as administrators easier. I mean, the amount of time those questions take is just unruly. And and again, like, it's our responsibility to ask the questions to you. I mean, I don't even have the authority to email Rich as a board member and ask him questions. So I think restructuring how the questions come in, how we filter them as a board, and then how we kind of develop them for the administration, I think is going to be really helpful in terms of time efficiency.
Anyone else? All right, so I'm just going to take a minute to repeat it, if I missed anything, please give a holler. All right, so stage one is the development, which is, the looking at the timing of the creation and the development of goals and objectives, summer and early fall. And when I say goals and objectives, I also do mean strategic plan. That second part of budget development is direction to the superintendent. The components of that would be forecasting. If there's any kind of guidance, of course, we're looking at the financial impact of operational goals coming out of the goals and objectives. And then I thought a fourth point is just responding to external changes. Sometimes we have things that we haven't planned for. We've experienced that quite a bit lately. So making sure we leave some responsiveness in there. Those would be the four components of
And the
setting up
fifth is Tara's, like, coming back to items that maybe, issues that came up.
Yeah, those ideally should hit goals and objectives.
Okay, good.
Then the second component is board review. The two things we've identified during that, or the things we've identified during that process, is taking a look at the role of other town bodies, particularly vis-a-vis the questions that we take in and how those get handled. And then the other component is looking at how we answer questions, making sure there's a timeline and we can follow the data so that we're not pulling different papers together. Then the next piece is handoff. Something that came up, I'm sorry, I took notes, I didn't say everything. Something that came up is after handoff, but the level of board or administrative support. So your attendance at meetings, maybe we want to take back sort of the calendar, take a look at when the superintendent or the cabinet or the board are spending their time after the budget's been handed off from the Board of Ed. While we want to make sure that there's people around answering questions, sometimes it's a lot of time.
It is a lot of time. It's not just sometimes.
Yes. All right, I don't have proactive in here, so I'm adding that back under board review. Well, that's really before, actually. I'll send these out.
Yeah, I want to clean them up.
And then lastly, there's the fourth stage, which is ensuring that there's follow-up after issues have been identified. I think that's it. I did speak to Dennis and Dave, who I knew wouldn't be here. Dennis also mentioned the calendar, so I'll add that to board review. And Dave mentioned picking up outstanding items from the previous year. Okay, so I'll clean that up and send it around, but is there anything glaring that we're missing? Okay. All right, thank you for that. Thank you to finance, all of you guys who will be taking it from here. Marge, personnel report.
No, so Dr. Adley was doing final interviews with the SSOs as the agenda was going out. So he has, as he said, 2 more to meet. They'll be on the next personnel report.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll move to public comment. Anyone in the audience? Okay, anyone on Zoom, Michelle?
There are no raised hands.
All right, may I please have a motion to adjourn? Tara, seconded by Julie. All those in favor? Thank you very much. Everybody have a good night.